name is Donald Hutson. I'm the eldest grandson of Jesse and Winifred Hutson from Parkdale, Oregon. I'm a retired U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps Engineer Officer of the rank of Captain. I'm also a retired professional engineer, and I currently live in North Idaho. My father was Lyle Hutson, who was the oldest child of Winifred and Jesse Hutson. My father was in hard rock construction. We moved all over the country, but on many occasions we had the great opportunity to come here and visit my grandparents, spend holidays with them and the rest of the family, and that was some of the most marvelous times of my memory and of my life. I mean, they were incredible people, incredible loving people. They cared about their family, they cared about the community, and they lived life to the fullest. While the Dalles Dam was being constructed, my father got a contract with the U.S. Corps of Engineers to remove navigation hazards within the Columbia River that would be part of the dam pool, and that included a lot of the Indian fishing wheels, their platforms that they had at Celilo Falls, that type of thing. In fact, I was real fortunate because we lived in the Dalles at the time in a trailer house at the east end of town, so we could oversee actually construction. But my father took me out to Celilo Falls, and I was probably the last white kid, or maybe kid at all, to go across onto the Falls Island where a lot of the platforms were in the old cable car. If you see pictures of Celilo Falls, if you look closely, you'll see that generally there's a cable car indicated in the picture, and that's what I'm talking about. It's just a little wooden type box that you sit in, and then you go hand over hand to pull yourself across the falls onto the island. So my father was contracted to remove things like that, and to remove the platforms, and he did all that. And at the end of the work, he salvaged the last dip and set nets that came from Celilo Falls that are now part of the museum. The dip net is a net that the Indians used on a long wooden pole and literally tried to catch the fish as they were jumping the falls. And do understand that this falls was very turbulent. If anybody fell in it, the likelihood of them living through that was somewhat minimal. So they would be on these platforms with a big rope wrapped around their waist in hopes if they did fall in, somebody could retrieve them. A set net is a larger diameter net that they would just put down in the water, and with a little bit of skill and time, you learn to be able to feel the fish as they hit the net, and then you can pull the net up and retrieve the fish from the net and then reset the net. I remember once my father was telling me about some of this, and he did buy some fish, for the family, for dinners and that type of thing. And once he walked up to an Indian man and asked him if he could buy some fish from him, and he says, sure. And they walked up to a brand new Cadillac. He opened the trunk, and the trunk was full of fish and water. I mean, no containers. I mean, the trunk was the container, and it amused him that the man would treat a brand new Cadillac in such a manner, but the Indians said, fish by him, fish right in him. And I thought that was a pretty interesting experience. My father was raised with two brothers, and certainly with my grandfather, and they were very much avid outdoors people. So during hunting seasons, in fact, and we'll step back a little further. During World War II, my grandfather and his brothers fed a lot of the people in the Upper Hood River Valley through their hunting. They would hunt deer and catch fish and provide it to families because there was no employment. I mean, there was no money. I mean, you appreciated what you could gather and what you could get. So my point in all this is that they were very experienced hunters. But my father went hunting with the Lou Mers family, and they're local residents of the Parkdale area. Lou and his wife Janice raised quite a family, but Lou Mers Jr. and Lou were quite hunters, and my father went hunting with them and some others. I'm not sure where that was, but it was in a pretty mountainous area. They'd hunted several days without any success or seeing any animals. And on this particular day, my father spotted a big bull elk across the canyon from where he was sitting or watching. He was quite a marksman. Not only did he learn to shoot as a young man, but he spent time in the Navy and qualified as a gunner on a PBY-2 and gained quite a reputation for being able to take out Japanese wings before they became a threat to the aircraft that he was in. The point is he was quite a marksman, so he took aim at this bull and shot it and killed it. He started headed towards where this bull was, but Lou Mers was closer to where this bull was than my father. And so Lou walked up on this bull laying on the ground and then called my dad on the radios. And this is the first time that any of them have ever used radios. And they weren't sure that it was even legal to do. So they all had call names. And my father's call name was Red Ryder. So Lou got on the radio and said, Red Ryder, you've killed a cow, which is a female elk. And all the others that they were hunting with suddenly got on their radios and started giving my father a pretty bad time about not being able to tell the difference between a bull elk and a cow elk. But shortly thereafter, my dad walked up and realized that he killed this massive bull elk, and everybody had a pretty good laugh about all of it before it was all done. My father had the elk head mounted, and it hung over the entrance to the downstairs in my grandfather's house. So if you went to visit his rock collection and other memorabilia that he had arranged in the basement, and many people did, you walked under this elk head to get there. And now it's currently in the museum. And, it's kind of like an old friend in a way. My father and mother have passed, but the elk still continues and is now hopefully appreciated by visitors to the museum. Well, the military service by my grandfather is pretty extensive. He fought during World War I, largely in Europe, and fortunately somewhat successfully because he returned without injury. In fact, while he was in France, there was a competition, something like the Olympics held, and I know very little of that, but I know my grandfather telling me that he and some others qualified to run a relay in that competition. And just before they were supposed to run, one of the other guys injured his leg, and my grandfather ended up running 2 legs of the 4-man relay, and they won the race. Quite a feat in those days. But my grandfather was in the Army in World War I. His 3 sons, my father Lyle, and my father's 2 brothers, Willard and Virgil, were also in the military. My father was in the Navy, Virgil was in the Navy, and Willard was in the U.S. Army Air Corps. All of them served. I'm the last male in the family to have served in the military. I served in the Army from 1971 through 74 during the Vietnam era. I spent quite a bit of time in South Korea during that time. I'm also a retired captain of the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps, which is a uniformed service that's 6,000 members strong. And I've served in that from 1984 through 2007. In fact, my Army uniform, as well as my Commissioned Corps uniform, are in the museum at this time. The Hutson Museum in Parkdale, Oregon wasn't created or wasn't really founded by just my grandparents, and that's Jesse and Winifred Hutson. It is and will continue to be a community effort of the Parkdale area, Hood River County, and that type of thing. My grandparents were certainly collectors, but with that they developed a certain notoriety, and local people contributed things from their basements, things from their attics that they wanted to see, they wanted to be seen. They wanted those things to have value. So this museum is kind of a collection of, from the community, of the community, and I think that's really important. But it wouldn't exist but for a few people. And prominent in those is a gentleman by the name of Jack Mills. Jack Mills came forward with the finances to allow this museum to be relocated from my grandparents' home, which needed to be emptied, because when both my grandmother and grandfather passed away, something needed to happen to all this collection. Well, Jack was a financier that allowed this building to be acquired and for the collection to be relocated here. Without him, this collection would not exist. And additional to that, Doris and Wayne Hill, who actually Doris is one of my father's cousins, but Doris and Wayne Hill were very active in the relocation of the museum and working with Jack Mills. But more important, they were the ones that maintained and operated the museum for approximately 30 years. And had they had not had that dedication and that certainly that love for what they were doing, because this is part of the community, this museum wouldn't exist. Other players, other founders for this museum certainly would be Lou or Louis and Janice Mers. The Mers family is and was a prominent family in the Parkdale area. They contribute a lot of items to the museum, but more important, their guidance was very much involved in the acquisition of the building and the setup of this museum. And finally, I have two uncles that represented the family. My father had already passed away, so my uncles Virgil and Willard Hutson were those that represented the family and worked hard with Jack Mills, the Mers family, and the Hill family to see that this museum could be placed here, could become a continuing representation, not only historically, but of the current Parkdale community. And with that, this museum wouldn't exist. I'd like to give my thanks as a member of the Hutson family to all those individuals in this amazing facility. Thank you.